60,000 years ago, the Empire burned our world. They thought humanity was extinct. But we didn't die. We drifted in the dark void, merging with machines just to survive the cold. Now we have returned. And your weapons are nothing but toys to us. Run all you want, Emperor. The ghosts of Earth are here for judgment.
The galaxy was quiet. It was a peaceful time for the Zarkonian Empire. High Commander Vrex stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Star Crusher. He looked out at the endless stars. He felt proud. For 60,000 years, his people, the Zarkonians, had ruled the galaxy. They were the masters. They were the gods of the stars. No one dared to fight them. Vrex took a sip of his blue drink and smiled. "Is the sector clear?" he asked his officer. The officer, a young alien with green skin and nervous eyes, looked at the scanner. "Yes, Commander. Nothing but dust and silence. The trade routes are safe." "Good," Vrex said. "The Emperor will be pleased." But the silence did not last. Suddenly, a loud sound filled the room. Beep. 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 Red lights started flashing. The crew stopped working. They looked confused. This alarm had not rung for thousands of years. It was the Class 0 alarm. It meant something impossible was happening. "Report." Vrex shouted, dropping his drink. "What is that noise?" The young officer was shaking. His hands moved fast over the glowing buttons. "Commander. I don't know. The sensors are picking up something massive. Something old." "Where?" "Sector 9, the officer said, his voice trembling. "The dead zone." Vrex froze. The dead zone was an empty part of space. There were no planets there. No stars. Just darkness. It was a forbidden area. 60,000 years ago, there was a solar system there. But the Zarkonians had destroyed it. They had turned the planets into dust to punish a stubborn race called humans. Since then, it was just a graveyard. "It must be a glitch," Vrex said, trying to stay calm. "Check the scanners again. Nothing can survive in the dead zone." "I am checking, sir. But, the energy reading is rising. It is not just one ship. It is, oh by the gods." The main screen on the wall flickered. The image of the stars changed. In the middle of the darkness, space began to tear open. It looked like the universe itself was bleeding. A black hole opened up, but it was not natural. It was made by a machine. From the black hole, a ship emerged. It was not like the elegant, shiny ships of the Zarkonian Empire. This ship was ugly. It was a giant block of black metal. It had no lights. No windows. It looked like a flying tombstone. It was huge, 10 times bigger than Vrex's warship. Then came another. And another. And another. Within seconds, the screen was filled with them. Thousands of black ships. They floated in perfect silence. They did not hail the Zarkonians. They did not send a message. They just sat there, like wolves watching a sheep. The bridge of the Star Crusher was dead silent. Every alien was too scared to breathe. "Who are they?" Vrex whispered. The officer ran a database search. The computer processed the design of the ships. It searched through millions of years of history. Then, the computer beeped. A single word appeared on the screen in the Zarkonian language. Terran. Vrex felt cold. He had heard stories about Terrans in history class. They were the humans. The soft, weak creatures who lived on a blue planet called Earth. The Zarkonians had wiped them out. They had burned their cities and cracked their planet into pieces. "That is impossible," Vrex said. "We killed them all. We verified it." 60,000 years ago. They are extinct. Commander, the officer said, we are being hailed. They are sending a transmission. Put it on screen, Vrex ordered. Let's see who is playing this trick on us. The screen blurred, and then a face appeared. It was a human. But he did not look like the weak humans from the history books. This man looked like he was carved from stone. His skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes were not normal, they were glowing red, mechanical implants replacing his natural eyes. He wore black armor that looked like it was part of his body. He did not look angry. He did not look sad. He looked empty. Vrex puffed out his chest. He had to show strength. I am High Commander Vrex of the glorious Sarkonian Empire. You are trespassing in our space. Identify yourself or be destroyed. The human on the screen did not blink. He stared at Vrex for a long, uncomfortable moment. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. We do not have names anymore, the human said. We only have a memory. What do you want? Vrex demanded. Money? Resources? We can give you. We do not want your money, the human interrupted. The camera behind him pulled back. Vrex saw that the human was standing on a bridge, but there were no chairs. Hundreds of other humans were standing perfectly still, connected to the ship by wires. They were not just piloting the ship, they were the ship. 60,000 years, the human said softly. Do you know how long that is? We drifted in the dark. We slept in the cold. We forgot how to laugh. We forgot how to love. We forgot the color of our own sun. The human leaned closer to the camera. But we did not forget you. Vrex swallowed hard. This is ancient history. I was not even born when Earth was destroyed. You cannot blame us for the crimes of our ancestors. The human tilted his head. If you enjoy the empire your ancestors built, you must also pay the price for how they built it. Open fire. Vrex screamed at his crew. Kill them. Destroy that ship. The Zarkonian crew panicked. They pressed the buttons. The Star Crusher fired its main plasma cannons. Huge bolts of green energy, hot enough to melt a moon, flew across space. They hit the lead human ship. Boom. The explosion was bright. Vrex smiled. No ship could survive a direct hit from his cannons. But when the smoke cleared, the smile vanished from his face. The black ship was unharmed. There was not even a scratch on the paint. A shimmering blue shield flickered for a second and then disappeared. The human ship hadn't even moved. Our turn, the human said on the screen. The transmission cut off. On the radar, the massive black ship opened a small hatch. A single missile shot out. It wasn't large. It looked like a small needle moving through space. Intercept it. Vrex yelled. Shoot it down. The Zarkonian defense lasers fired. They hit the missile, but the missile did not explode. It simply absorbed the energy and moved faster. It was too fast. Brace for impact, the officer screamed. The missile did not hit the Star Crusher. It flew past them. They missed? Vrex asked, confused. No, Commander, the officer whispered, looking at the long-range sensors. They weren't aiming at us. Then what were they aiming at? The sun. Vrex looked at the rear-view screen. The missile flew straight into the local star of this solar system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the star turned black. It began to collapse. The missile had injected something into the star's core, antimatter, or perhaps a mini black hole. The star imploded, sucking all the light in, and then exploded in a shockwave of pure destruction. The planets in the system were vaporized instantly. The Zarkonian fleet, stationed around the planets, burned into ash in a microsecond. Vrex watched in horror as his entire armada, thousands of ships, simply disappeared from the scanners. "Commander," the officer said, his voice dead. "The shockwave is coming for us." Vrex looked at the human fleet. They were not moving. They were riding the shockwave. Their shields were so strong they could surf on a supernova. They didn't just return for revenge, Vrex realized. They returned for extermination. The shockwave hit the Star Crusher. The news of the destruction spread faster than light. On the planet Zarkos, the capital of the Empire, the Golden Palace was in chaos. Emperor Xeroth sat on his throne. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy. He ruled over 1,000 systems. But today, his hands were shaking. "Gone?" Xeroth asked. His voice was quiet. "What do you mean, gone?" The intelligence officer bowed his head low, afraid to look at the Emperor. "Everything, my lord. The outpost in Sector 9. The patrol fleet. Even the star, the sun of that system, it was extinguished. The humans destroyed a star just to kill our ships." The room went silent. The generals and advisors looked at each other with fear. Destroying a star was impossible. It was the power of gods, not mortals. "Humans," Xeroth spat the word out like poison. "They were dirt. We burned them. We broke them. How can they challenge us?" "They are coming, my lord," the officer whispered. "Long-range sensors show their fleet is moving. They are not stopping. They are heading toward the core systems." Xeroth stood up. His fear turned into anger. "Then let them come. We are the Zarkonian Empire. We do not hide. Assemble the Grand Armada. Call every warship from every corner of the galaxy. If they want a war, we will give them a war they will never forget." Xeroth clenched his fist. "They are just ghosts. And ghosts can be banished." The Battle of Nebula Prime. 2 days later, the galaxy held its breath. The Zarkonian Empire had gathered the largest fleet in history. 50,000 warships waited near the purple gas clouds of Nebula Prime. It was a wall of metal and guns. There were destroyers, carriers, and dreadnoughts. Their cannons were charged. Their shields were at maximum power. Admiral Kale stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Iron Will. He was a veteran of 100 wars. He was confident. "Hold position," Kale ordered. "Wait for them." And then, they arrived. Space did not tear open this time. There were no black holes. The human fleet just appeared. 1 second, space was empty. The next second, 5,000 black ships were there. They used a technology the Zarkonians did not understand, instant teleportation without portals. The human ships were different shapes and sizes, but they were all pitch black. They absorbed the light from the nearby stars. They looked like shadows cut out of the universe. "Fire!" Kale screamed. "Fire everything!" 50,000 Zarkonian ships fired at once. The sky lit up with green and red lasers. Thousands of missiles flew like a swarm of angry bees. It was enough firepower to destroy a whole solar system. The sheer noise of the energy discharge shook the sensors. The attacks hit the human fleet. Explosions covered the black ships. The Zarkonian crew cheered. "We got them," one soldier yelled. But as the fire faded, the cheering stopped. The human ships were still there. They had not moved. They had not fired back. The Zarkonian lasers had not even scratched their paint. "Impossible," Kale whispered. "Their armor, it adapts. It eats the energy." Then, the humans attacked. But they did not use lasers. They did not use missiles. A signal was broadcasted from the human flagship. It wasn't a message. It was a computer virus. A weaponized code. On every Zarkonian ship, the lights suddenly turned red. The engines stopped humming. The weapons went offline. "Sir! I have lost control of the helm," a pilot shouted. "Life support is failing," another cried. "The doors are locking. We are trapped." Admiral Kale watched in horror as his own ship turned against him. The humans were hacking them. Not just the computers, but the entire fleet. Then, the slaughter began. The human ships released thousands of small drones. These drones were fast. They flew toward the helpless Zarkonian ships. They did not shoot. Instead, they acted like bullets. They ran straight through the hulls of the alien ships. They punched holes in the metal. Air sucked out into space. Thousands of Zarkonian soldiers were pulled out into the cold dark. It was silent. It was efficient. It was cold. The humans were not fighting a war. They were exterminating pests. Kale's ship, the Iron Will, was the only one left with power. The human flagship, a colossus called the Vengeance, drifted slowly toward him. "They want us alive," Kale realized. "They want a witness." A tractor beam locked onto Kale's ship. He felt the pull. He was being dragged into the belly of the beast. The interrogation. Kale woke up in a room. It was not a prison cell. It looked more like a laboratory. The walls were gray metal. The air was freezing cold. Kale shivered. His blue skin was pale. He tried to stand, but his hands were cuffed to a metal table. A door hissed open. A figure walked in. It was a human. But like the one on the screen before, this human was terrifying. He was tall. Half of his face was covered by a metal mask. His right arm was entirely robotic, with wires glowing blue under the synthetic skin. He wore a uniform that looked old, tattered, but kept clean with great care. On his chest was a badge, Admiral Kane, United Terran Remnants. Kane pulled out a metal chair and sat opposite Kale. The metal screeched against the floor. Kane did not speak. He just stared. His organic eye was brown and tired. His mechanical eye was a glowing red lens that zoomed in and out. "Why?" Kale asked, his voice shaking. "Why didn't you just kill me like the others?" Kane placed a metal tablet on the table. "Because the dead cannot carry a message. And I need someone to tell your emperor what is coming." Kale tried to be brave. You are monsters. We destroyed you. We watched Earth burn. How did you survive?" Kane leaned back. He looked at his robotic hand, flexing the metal fingers. "We ran," Kane said. His voice was rough, like gravel. "When your ships cracked the Earth, a few hundred colony ships escaped. We didn't have coordinates. We didn't have a map. We just engaged the jump drives and went into the void." "The void?" Kale gasped. "That is the space between galaxies. There is nothing there. No stars. No energy. Just endless dark." "Exactly," Kane said. "We were lost in the dark for 60,000 years." Kane leaned forward, his red eye glowing brighter. "Do you know what happens to a species when you take away their sun? When you take away their home? We drifted in the dark. Our food ran out. Our power ran out. We started to die. So, how are you here?" Kale asked. "We changed," Kane whispered. "We realized that our biological bodies were weak. They needed heat. They needed food. They needed sleep. The void does not forgive weakness. So, we stopped being human." Kane tapped his metal mask. "We replaced our lungs so we could breathe recycled toxic air. We replaced our stomachs so we could eat synthetic paste. We replaced our eyes so we could see in the absolute dark. We merged with our machines. We became the ship. Kale felt sick. He looked at the human's face. There was no joy there. Only cold, hard survival. We spent 60,000 years in the cold, Cain continued. Generations were born and died inside those metal boxes. We never saw a flower. We never felt the rain. The only thing that kept us warm, was the hatred. Cain stood up. He walked to the window. Outside, the wreckage of the Zarkonian fleet floated in space. We told our children stories, Cain said softly. Not fairy tales. We told them about the blue sky we lost. We told them about the green grass. And we told them who took it away. He turned back to Kale. We didn't come back for resources, Admiral. We don't need your planets. We don't need your money. We have evolved beyond that. Then what do you want? Kale cried out. Balance, Cain said. We want you to feel the cold. We want you to feel the dark. Cain pressed a button on the table. The cuffs on Kale's hands unlocked. Go, Cain said. Take a shuttle. Go back to Zarkos. Tell your emperor that the ghosts are here. Tell him that the humans he burned are gone. We are something else now. We are the void. The advance. Kale fled. He was given a small shuttle and allowed to leave. As he flew away at maximum speed, he looked back. The human fleet was gathering. They were not looting the destroyed ships. They were not celebrating their victory. They were forming a formation. An arrow shape. They were pointing straight toward the center of the galaxy. Kale looked at his navigation computer. The path they were taking led to only one place. Zarkos. The humans were not stopping. They were going to the heart of the Empire. And they had a weapon that Kale had seen on the Vengeance. A weapon so big it took up the entire center of their flagship. It wasn't a laser. It looked like a giant engine. They are going to do it, Kale whispered to himself in the empty shuttle. They are going to do to us what we did to them. He pushed the throttle forward. He had to warn the Emperor. But deep down, Kale knew the truth. It was already too late. The monsters from Earth were not just coming to win a war. They were coming to end an era. The capital city of Zarkos was beautiful. It was a city of gold and glass, shining under the light of 3 moons. For thousands of years, no enemy had ever set foot here. The citizens lived in peace, believing they were untouchable. But today, the sky turned black. Emperor Xeroth stood on the balcony of his high tower. He watched the clouds. They were not storm clouds. They were ships. Millions of human landing pods were falling from the sky. They looked like black rain. Admiral Kale, who had just returned, stood behind the Emperor. He was covered in sweat and dirt. My lord, Kale said, breathing heavily. You must evacuate. We cannot stop them. Their ships in orbit have destroyed our defense grid. The shield is down. Xeroth turned around. His eyes were full of rage. Run. I am the Emperor of the Galaxy. I do not run from ghosts. Send out the Imperial Guard. Send out the war beasts. We will fight them on the streets. But my lord, Kale tried to argue. Go. Xeroth screamed. Kale bowed and ran to lead the defense. Xeroth looked back at the sky. A landing pod crashed into a building nearby. The building collapsed in a cloud of dust. Let us see if these humans bleed, Xeroth whispered. The Iron Rain. On the ground, the city was a war zone. The Zarkonian Imperial Guard was the strongest army in the universe. These were not the weak sailors from the spaceships. These were 8-foot-tall warriors with thick green skin and laser rifles that could cut through tanks. They were accompanied by war beasts, giant, 6-legged monsters with sharp teeth, bred for killing. Captain Varg of the Imperial Guard roared at his soldiers. Hold the line. Protect the palace. Boom. 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 The ground shook. The human pods had landed. They were large, metal coffins. Smoke hissed from them. The doors of the pods blasted open. Fire! Captain Varg yelled. Hundreds of laser beams hit the smoke. The Zarkonians fired until their guns overheated. They waited for the screams. They waited to see dead bodies. But there were no screams. From the smoke, a sound emerged. Hor-clank. Hor-clank. It was the sound of heavy machinery. The first human soldier stepped out. He was wearing a Titan suit. It was a bulky, rusted exoskeleton of black steel. It made him 10 feet tall. On one arm, he had a rotating minigun. On the other, a massive hydraulic claw. The Zarkonian lasers hit the Titan suit. The armor glowed orange where the lasers hit, but it did not melt. The human inside didn't even flinch. Is that a tank? A young soldier asked, terrified. No, Captain Varg said, his voice dropping. That is infantry. The Titan raised its minigun. The barrel spun. A noise like a chainsaw filled the air. BRRRT. Bullets, solid metal bullets, not lasers, tore through the air. The Zarkonians were used to energy shields, which blocked lasers. But they were not ready for kinetic slugs. The bullets shredded their armor. The war beasts were cut in half before they could even jump. It was a massacre. The humans advanced. They did not run. They walked slowly, with a rhythmic, terrifying stomp. Thud. 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 Captain Varg saw his men dying. He pulled out a plasma grenade and charged. For the Empire, he screamed. He threw the grenade at the lead Titan. It exploded on the human's chest. Smoke covered the machine. Varg smiled. Got him. A giant metal hand reached out of the smoke and grabbed Varg by the throat. The Titan lifted Varg into the air effortlessly. The grenade had only blackened the armor. The human's helmet faceplate slid open. Varg stared into the face of the human. It was pale, scarred, and covered in wires. The human's mouth was gone, replaced by a speaker box. Pain, the electronic voice buzzed. Do you know what it feels like? Go to hell. Varg choked. We have been there, the human said. It was cold. The hydraulic claw squeezed. Crunch. Captain Varg went limp. The Titan dropped him and kept walking. The flashback. As the battle raged toward the Emperor's palace, a strange thing happened. The humans were broadcasting a signal on all frequencies. It hijacked every screen, every speaker, and every communication device in the city. It wasn't a speech. It was a memory. Every Zarkonian soldier, every civilian hiding in their basements, saw the same video playing on their devices. It was grainy footage. It was 60,000 years old. The video showed a blue sky. Green trees. Children playing in a park. It showed a mother holding a baby, laughing. It was Earth. It was beautiful. Then, the sky in the video turned dark. Zarkonian ships appeared. They fired their beams. The cities evaporated. The oceans boiled. The mother in the video looked up, screaming silently, shielding her baby as the fire consumed them. The video cut to black. Then, text appeared in the Zarkonian language. We remember. Then, the video changed. It showed the inside of the human escape ships. It showed thousands of humans crowded in dark, freezing hallways. It showed them starving. It showed them operating on themselves, cutting off their own limbs to replace them with machines because the biological parts were failing. It showed a father telling his son, "Don't cry. Tears freeze in the void. Save your water." The video ended. In the streets of Zarkos, the aliens were horrified. They had always been told that humans were savage monsters who attacked the Empire first. The history book said the Zarkonians were heroes who saved the galaxy. We did that," a Zarkonian soldier whispered, lowering his weapon. "We killed a whole planet." "Don't listen to their lies," an officer shouted. "Keep firing." But the morale was broken. The Zarkonians weren't fighting monsters anymore. They were fighting the victims of their own ancestors' sins. The palace gates. The human army reached the Golden Palace. The gates were made of solid diamond and neutronium. They were supposed to be indestructible. Admiral Kale stood behind the gate with the last of the royal guard. "They cannot get through this," he said, trying to convince himself. "These gates can withstand a nuclear blast." Outside, the human army stopped. From the ranks of the Titans, a single figure walked forward. It was smaller than the Titans, but radiated more power. It was Admiral Kane, the leader from the ship. He walked up to the giant diamond gates. He placed his robotic hand on the surface. "Open," Kane whispered. His hand glowed blue. Nanobots, microscopic machines, flowed from his fingertips into the gate. They ate the diamond. They broke the atomic bonds of the material. In seconds, the indestructible gate turned into gray dust and crumbled to the ground. Kale stepped back in shock. "What kind of technology is that?" Kane stepped over the dust. "We had a lot of time to study the nature of matter," he said. The human soldiers poured into the palace courtyard. The royal guard charged, but they were swatted aside like flies. The humans were not killing everyone. They were ignoring the servants and the civilians. They were only killing the soldiers who held weapons. They had a target. Kale fell to his knees. He was wounded. He looked up at Kane. "Finish it," Kale said. "Kill me." Kane stopped. He looked down at Kale. "You delivered the message, Admiral. You have served your purpose." Kane walked past him. "We are here for the one who sits on the throne. The last resort." Deep inside the palace, in the throne room, Emperor Zeroth watched the security feed. He saw his gates fall. He saw his guards die. He saw the metal monsters coming up the stairs. "They are here," he whispered. He looked around the empty room. His advisors had fled. His generals were dead. He was alone. "I will not let them take me," Zeroth said. "I will not let them turn me into a slave." He walked behind his throne. There was a secret wall. He placed his hand on a scanner, and the wall opened. Inside was a small, dark room. In the center of the room, floating in a magnetic field, was a device. It looked like a crystal pyramid, pulsing with purple energy. It was the Omega device. It was a weapon from the ancient era. The legend said that if this device was activated, it would create a tear in the fabric of reality. It would consume the entire planet. It was a suicide weapon. If the Emperor couldn't rule Zarkos, no one would. Zeroth's hand hovered over the activation panel. "If I die, you die with me," he hissed. The heavy doors of the throne room began to melt. Sparks flew as the humans cut through the last barrier. Zeroth laughed maniacally. "Come in. Come and meet your end." The door crashed down. Admiral Kane walked in, flanked by two massive titans. Zeroth slammed his hand onto the panel. Click. The Omega device began to spin. A high-pitched whine filled the room. The purple light became blinding. The ground started to crack. Gravity began to fail, and loose objects floated into the air. "You are too late," Zeroth screamed. "This planet will be a black hole in 2 minutes." You have won nothing but dust. Cain stood still. He didn't run. He didn't shoot. He just watched the spinning device. Do you think, Cain said, his voice calm and terrifyingly loud over the noise of the machine, that in 60,000 years of living in the void, we didn't learn how to control gravity? Xenowars' smile faded. What? Cain raised his hand. The throne room was shaking violently. The purple light from the Omega device was blinding. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched scream of energy that threatened to tear the planet apart. Emperor Xenowars laughed. It was the laugh of a madman. He held on to his throne as gravity began to fail. Pieces of the ceiling started to float upward. It is over. Xenowars screamed at the human admiral. You cannot stop a black hole. In 10 seconds, this world will be crushed into a singularity. You lose, human. You lose. Admiral Cain stood perfectly still. The chaos did not move him. His heavy metal boots were magnetized to the floor. His red mechanical eye zoomed in on the spinning purple crystal of the Omega device. 10 seconds, Cain said. His voice was calm. It cut through the noise like a knife. That is 9 seconds more than we need. Cain raised his robotic right arm. His hand opened. Inside his palm, a small port opened up. A beam of pure white light shot out from his hand. It hit the Omega device. It was not a laser. It was a data stream. A hacking signal. But it was not just code, it was a counter-frequency to gravity itself. The purple light of the device flickered. The high-pitched scream turned into a low groan. The floating rocks crashed back down to the floor. Xenowars' laugh got stuck in his throat. What are you doing? This device uses a gravitational singularity, Cain explained, as if he was teaching a child. We lived in the void. We lived on the edge of black holes to hide from your patrols. We learned to sing their song. The Omega device slowed down. The purple light faded. The crystal stopped spinning. It turned dull and gray. It was dead. Cain lowered his hand. The room was silent again. The only sound was Xenowars' heavy breathing. Impossible, Xenowars whispered. He fell back onto his throne. That is ancient technology. No one understands how it works. We had 60,000 years to figure it out, Cain said. He walked slowly toward the throne. Clank. 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 Xenowars pulled a golden pistol from his belt. He fired at Cain. Ping. Ping. The bullets bounced off Cain's chest. Cain didn't even slow down. He reached the throne. He grabbed the pistol from Xenowars' hand and crushed it into a ball of metal with his fingers. Cain grabbed the Emperor by his royal collar and lifted him into the air. Xenowars kicked his legs, helpless. Please. Xenowars begged, his arrogance finally gone. Please. I surrender. I will give you anything. I have treasury planets filled with gold. I have technology. I can make you the Emperor. Just let me live. Cain brought Xenowars' face close to his metal mask. We do not want your gold, Cain said. Gold does not fix a broken heart. Gold does not bring back the dead. Then what do you want? Xenowars cried. Slaves. I have billions of citizens. Take them. They are yours. Cain stared at him for a long moment. Then, he threw Xenowars onto the floor. We don't want slaves, Cain said. We want a garden. The new world. The war ended an hour later. When the news spread that the Omega device had failed and the Emperor was captured, the Zarkonian army surrendered. They dropped their weapons. They knew they could not fight the Iron Ghosts. Admiral Cain stood on the balcony of the palace. Below him, millions of Zarkonian citizens gathered in the streets. They were terrified. They expected the humans to start executing them. They expected fire. They expected death. But the humans did not fire. The massive black ships in the sky descended. They hovered over the city. A giant hologram appeared in the sky. It was the face of Admiral Kane. People of Zarkos, Kane's voice boomed across the city. 60,000 years ago, your ancestors came to our home. They saw a blue planet full of life. They saw water. They saw trees. And they burned it to ash. The crowd trembled. We drifted in the dark, Kane continued. We became machines to survive. We lost our bodies. We lost our humanity. But we never lost our memory. The black ships opened their cargo bays. But instead of bombs, they dropped machines. Huge, spider-like machines landed in the fields outside the cities. They dug into the ground. We are not here to destroy you, Kane said. That would be too easy. Death is a mercy. And we are not merciful. The spider machines began to work. They pumped chemicals into the soil. They released clouds of nanobots into the air. We are here to take your home, Kane said. And make it ours. The sky of Zarkos, which was usually a pale yellow, began to change. The chemicals reacted with the atmosphere. Slowly, the yellow faded. It turned into a deep, rich blue. The Zarkonians gasped. They had never seen a blue sky. You took Earth from us, Kane said. So now, this planet is Earth. The fate of the Emperor. Days passed. The transformation of the planet was rapid. The human terraforming technology was millions of years ahead of anything the Zarkonians had. The red deserts of Zarkos were turned into green grasslands. The acidic oceans were purified into fresh water. The alien trees were ripped out and replaced with seeds from Earth, seeds that the humans had kept frozen in their ships for thousands of generations. In the center of the new capital, a garden was built. It was a perfect replica of a park that once existed in New York City on Earth. In the middle of that garden, there was a statue. It was a statue of a human woman holding a child, the same image from the flashback video. And at the feet of the statue, there was a man. It was Xeroth, the former emperor. He was not in a prison cell. He was not in chains. He was wearing a simple gray uniform. In his hand, he held a broom. 2 Titan soldiers stood guard at the gate of the garden. They watched him. Xeroth swept the leaves. He cleaned the path. He watered the flowers. A group of human children, some biological, some part machine, ran past him. They were laughing. They didn't look at him with fear. They didn't even know who he was. To them, he was just the gardener. Admiral Kane walked into the garden. He watched Xeroth working. Xeroth looked up. His eyes were tired. He looked old. The power was gone. The arrogance was gone. Is the water level correct? Kane asked. Xeroth nodded slowly. Yes. The roses are blooming. Good, Kane said. Why? Xeroth asked softly. Why this? Why didn't you kill me? Why make me a servant? Kane looked at the green trees and the blue sky. He took a deep breath of the air. It smelled like rain. It smelled like home. Because, Kane said, looking down at the former emperor. Killing you would only last a moment. But forcing you to take care of the life you tried to destroy, that is a punishment that lasts a lifetime. Kane pointed to the statue. You destroyed our past. So now, you will spend every day of your remaining life building our future. You will keep this garden perfect. If a single flower dies, you answer to me. Xeroth looked at the broom in his hand. He looked at the giant statue of the humans he had hated. He realized his fate. He was not a martyr. He was not a legend. He was just a janitor in the kingdom of his enemies. Get back to work, Kane ordered. Zeroth bowed his head and started sweeping. The epilogue, Terra Nova. Admiral Kane walked back to his ship. The sun was setting. It was a beautiful, golden sunset. His second-in-command, a female cyborg named Lieutenant Mira, was waiting for him. "Admiral," she said. "The fleet is awaiting orders. The other systems in the Zarkonian Empire are surrendering. They are asking what we will do to them." Kane looked at his metal hands. He thought about the 60,000 years of darkness. He thought about the cold. "Tell them," Kane said, "that the war is over. Tell them that the Zarkonian Empire is gone. This galaxy is now under the protection of the United Terran Remnants." "And this planet?" Mira asked. "Do we keep the name Zarkos?" Kane shook his head. He looked at the blue sky one last time. "No," Kane said. "Mark it on the star maps." He smiled. It was a rare, genuine smile. "Call it Terra Nova." The camera pulled back, flying higher and higher. It showed the garden. It showed the city. It showed the planet, now a beautiful blue and green jewel floating in space. And standing guard around it were thousands of black ships, the silent guardians who had returned from the dark to reclaim the light. That if you believe humanity never surrenders, smash that like button. Join the Terran fleet by hitting subscribe and turning on the notification bell so you never miss a signal from the void. And tell me in the comments, do you think the Emperor's punishment was fair, or should he have been executed? I'll be reading your answers. Signing off.